Hello students, welcome to Module 3. In this module we will be discussing discretion in a law enforcement context. By the end of this module you would or should be able to explain the influence of the use of discretion on police officer behavior, discuss the way low-level visibility of police work allows the potential for bias and abuse by officers, analyze the politics of police discretion in the United States, define horizontal discretion as it relates to policing, evaluate ways that police discretion may be monitored and controlled, and examine the need for police to exercise discretion to effectively perform their day-to-day duties. Before going through the rest of the PowerPoint, you should have at the very least read Chapter 2 of the Walker text. And with that, we shall begin. While you're reading, see if you can answer the following questions. First, in Chapter 2 of Walker's book, Taming the System, you are introduced to the topic of police discretion. Walker begins the chapter with a section entitled The Problem with Police Discretion. What does Walker mean by that? Next, Walker tells us that police have very little external scrutiny and very little accountability. What does he mean by this? Do you agree with Walker? Why or why not? Third, what are the political considerations relating to police discretion? What role has the United States Supreme Court played in curtailing police discretion? Next, police discretion is not a single decision point or event according to Walker. Police officers routinely exercise discretion in a broad range of decisions affecting the life and liberty of citizens. What are the various decision points wherein officers may exercise discretion on a daily basis? Lastly, how might police discretion be controlled? One method is the United States Supreme Court, both directly and indirectly. How so? Police officers have a lot of discretion. Some of their decisions include whether or not to arrest, the charge they file, which is heavily influenced by victim preferences, how quickly they get to a scene, how they respond to a situation, whether or not they fill out a crime report. For example, when they reject citizens' claims, unfounding goes into this category, and whether or not they were going to stop someone in the street, search their belongings, etc. The book briefly discusses the Rodney King incident. This incident highlighted the fact that most police work is a low visibility phenomenon. This means it occurs in a setting where officers are not monitored by any external authority. An investigation of the incident found that the internal system of police discipline had failed. And lastly, it was another example of how low-income black men are the most common victims of police misconduct. The following quote highlights the issue. Walker says, "Not only is routine police work free of effective external scrutiny, but the internal mechanisms of accountability appear to have failed." This quote is important to note because when there is no accountability, there is a higher potential for bias and misconduct. Usually, highly publicized events of police misconduct have been the driving force of the desire to control discretion with regard to the police. The efforts to control discretion has largely been in the hands of the Supreme Court. Because of this, much of the discussion of controlling police discretion has focused attention on the court and drawn attention away from other means. It has also heavily skewed police discretion in terms of the exclusionary rule, so as a result, other discretionary issues are ignored. Policing is defined in terms of horizontal discretion because it isn't a single decision point or event. There are multiple considerations made by different officers in different assignments. As a result, controlling discretion requires encouraging officers to choose one option over another rather than trying to forbid specific actions. Walker provides several examples of police behaviors and situations where attempts to monitor and control discretion have had varying degrees of success. With deadly force, police used to be able to shoot fleeing suspects and not have to worry about the consequences. Police shootings have been a civil rights issue because they differentially impacted minorities, especially African Americans. The control of police shootings occurred because of administrative legislation, mostly at the state level, which the Supreme Court later ratified. One study showed that the restrictive policy in New York reduced shootings by about 30% without increasing crime rates or assaults on officers or increasing the number of officers killed in the line of duty. National data also show that restrictive policies reduce police shootings. With domestic violence, which has sometimes been considered a feminist issue, is a situation similar to deadly force in that both situations rely on controlling discretion through written policies. However, domestic violence differs as it represents the only attempt to control the arrest decision, which Walker argues is the most important decision in the entire criminal process. In the 60s, counseling or mediation was preferable to arrest, which resulted in officers systematically under-enforcing the law. Some wondered if mandatory arrest would deter future violence, but research demonstrated that it didn't deter violence any more than alternative methods. One issue with domestic violence policy and other general arrest decisions is that they don't provide any reporting or review requirements. This is a major gap in the discretion control. Both deadly force and domestic violence policies changed when there was a well-organized political push pressing for this change. With searches and seizures, political controversies pushed cases to the Supreme Court. At this level, the court developed rules to limit police discretion, for example, the exclusionary rule in Miranda. And lastly, attempts to control police discretion locally have been made with regard to high-speed pursuits. There isn't a strong political force behind it, but officers are asked to consider the benefits of pursuing an offender versus the costs and risks to the community. Under pursuit policies, certain police actions are actually forbidden. Lastly, so police do need to be held accountable in order to reduce bias and discrimination. However, police discretion is important and necessary in order for them to perform their jobs. They often operate alone and need to consider the safest option. Every situation is different, and no one-size-fits-all policy is going to allow officers to safely navigate their work environment. And that is the end.